Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be watching a versus game between myself and Josh Fernando. I'm going to be on the left playing Regigigas, and then on the right, Josh is going to be playing Flyterra. So definitely a cool matchup. I will say in advance that I haven't played a ton of Regigigas, and I do believe that I made a few misplays playing the game. So I think that Regigigas is one of those decks that it takes a lot of games before you can play it really perfectly, and it's also one of those decks where it's pretty mediocre. It's not mediocre, but it loses a lot of its power if you're not playing it really optimally. So hopefully my mistakes will help you out if you decide to play this deck eventually. Yeah, so we flip. I start off a Crobat, and then Josh has got a Turtwig and a Baltoy. He's just going to go DCE, and then I'm going to get attacked for 20. Definitely an okay turn one. I mean, hitting a DC on a Turtwig turn one opens him up for the Giga Drain turn two with the Torterra. I do hit that Collector. Definitely a clutch supporter in this deck. Really, really solid supporter in Regigigas. Probably going to grab a Regi, a Mesprit, and something else. The thing about Mesprit here is, I know that he's going to be going for a Claydol if he can prevent it. Oh, I didn't go for a Mesprit. Interesting. But yeah, so I go for the Regi. I guess I want to discard cards instead. But yeah, so getting those three means I'm going to be able to get some cards in the discard with the Regi, hopefully some energy so that I can sacrifice those later. And then I do get to set up as well, which is definitely clutch. The metal on that Regi. Definitely a decent turn one here. I mean, you really wish you had the Ux or the Mesprit in hand so that you could get the other one with the Collector, but you can't always win them all like that. For a discard on a Premier and a metal. Yeah, because the Regi is in hand there, so that's definitely an okay call. I think if you don't have a Regi in hand, you can't discard that Premier, but because it's in hand, that's a pretty fine call. So I just strand the Baltoy active with the Regice, and then Josh is going to go for Roseanne's here. Probably going to get a Spiritomb and something else. Spiritomb is pretty clutch here if he doesn't have a lot. He just needs a Spiritomb and an energy, and retreat, and then Darkness Grace. Yeah, both of these decks are kind of slow setting up. It's kind of fun because you have options in terms of how you want to set up your board when you're playing against a slow deck. Flyterra is a stage 2 deck, and Regigigas takes a lot of manual attaches before it can get up and going. So in a game like this, it's it comes down a lot to board state. Whoever establishes the stronger board is likely to continue into the late game. Just because of how important setup is when you're playing a slow deck like this. So Josh is going to go for the Grass and the Spiritomb. Grass is good because it means he gets to hit the Giga Drain off the Torterra. I'm assuming he's going to go for a Claydol off this Darkness Grace. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So he hit the Torterra too. That's clutch. It means he gets to Giga Drain next turn if he wants to. If you can find a switch out as well. He's going to Ux for some cards. Definitely Ux when you can here is nice. I mean, that's why I wanted to hit that Mesprit. Mesprit would have been really nice. Wouldn't be able to prevent that Ux from seeing a bunch of cards and finding that Turtwig, but can't win them all. Can't always hit all the cards you want to hit. It's just going to go for a retreat and then a Darkness Grace. I think that Josh's board is looking pretty good right now. The fighting type Torterra does a lot of work against this deck. If you don't have an expert belt on a Regigigas, you have 150 HP, and then if the fighting type Torterra, the one from Stormfront, I forget what the attack is called, but it does 60, and then it forces you to switch. If you have an expert belt, you do 160, which one-shots a Regigigas without a belt. So definitely a really important part of this matchup that I think is going to come into play eventually here. So yeah, he's going to go for a Darkness Grace, and he does hit that Claydol too, which is nice. It means he gets to get the Grodel with the Darkness Grace here to hit that Stormfront Torterra as soon as he can. I've got a pretty decent hand. I mean, I have that water, so I'm going to be able to get an attach this turn. And I do see a judge there as well. I don't know if I want to judge yet. Usually you want to hold your judges for the turns that you can judge and then Giga Blaster. Judge Giga Blaster or let loose Giga Blaster is a really good way to potentially just hand cuck your opponent out of the game. Because you put them to 4 and then you take a 1 out of 4, and if they have one supporter, you have a 25% chance of just hitting it. So definitely dropping the water there. Gonna go for a Roseanne's. Gonna get some energy in the discard with this Regice, which is definitely clutch. And the cool thing about Regice too, I'm getting trainer locked right now, which could suck. I don't remember exactly what's in my hand, but you know, obviously you don't want to be trainer locked. And the cool thing about Regice is if you use Regice when there's a Spiritomb in the active, it forces it to switch because it's a basic, and then you can get your trainers back. So definitely another cool little thing that this deck can do is you can get yourself out of trainer lock with a Spiritomb if you ever find yourself in that position. So I'm going to go for a fighting and a Mesprit here. Gonna go for the power lock. And see, like, I think I actually remember going for the judge here because Mesprit judge is also a really good call. And like Josh, I know Josh has that grass in his hand because he Rosansed for it, and I really don't want him to get that attach if I can prevent it. And so I put the Regi up here because I thought that it'd stack for 2. Shows how much I play Regigigas. I'm kind of a noob. So I don't judge. Interesting. I do hit the power lock though, so I honestly probably would have liked to see a judge there that turn. I mean, Josh having the grass in hand, I think the judge there was the correct call. So a little misplay that I made there, but I don't know if it's, I mean, holding it, being conservative with the judge is good too, because hopefully you can hit it the same turn that you Giga Blaster, I think is the idea of what I'm doing here. But I don't get to Giga Blast for another 2 turns, so I don't know. I think a judge there would have been good. Josh hits the Torterra, the fighting type Torterra, definitely really important. And he's going to get that grass on the regular Torterra. And it's a Nidoran as well. So yeah, it just goes for a fresh pass. Doesn't have a lot off of that Mesprit, so I was able to power lock him a little bit there. He wasn't able to get anything off his Claydol, and he didn't really have anything in his hand other than the grass. So I had a Nidoran as well, but that, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'm probably gonna discard the Relicanth. Yeah, Relicanth is not a huge card in this matchup. Really, really good card against like Luxray. And anything that's fighting weak, though, I do really like that card. It's a really good tech. Yeah, I can use that Regice. I just wanted that expert belt use, and this is like where it's coming into play. I have trainers in my hand that I would like to use, but Josh dropped a Spiritomb active, so I don't get to use that super scoop up, or I don't get to use that expert belt if I wanted to as well. But now I have access to those trainer cards, which is kind of a cool part about Regice. I'm gonna go for a scoop up. Hit the heads on the scoop. Gonna go for the Ooks. Gonna go for the Mesprit. Yeah, power lock. Retaining power lock in this deck is one of the things that I think that a lot of newer players to the deck don't always do consistently. I think keeping Mesprit lock as consistently as you can is pretty important. Just to slow your opponent down. I mean, like Josh didn't hit anything last turn, so if I'm able to Mesprit lock him again, it definitely does a lot for my case. I do hit that level X as well, so it means next turn I'm going to be able to Giga Blaster. And having that expert belt on is really good too. It means that even if Josh hits DCE, expert belt on his own Torterra, and a switching option, and I don't know what resistance is because I'm an idiot, so I just bring up the Claydol, which is a much better play with the power lock. You get to hit it, and then, you know, unless you have DCE in hand, which I don't think he does based off his last turn, I just get to kill the Claydol, which is a really great play. Yeah, just gonna drag off the Claydol, and then Josh goes for a draw. Be really clutch if he could hit like a switch out or a DCE. If I remember correctly, I don't think he does. So he just goes for the attach on the Torterra, which is totally fine too. He's just getting ready for when that Claydol dies. Is hopefully going to be able to bring up the Torterra and then find an expert belt and hit for lots and lots of damage. To be honest, I don't think the extra belt's like super important because, okay, so you're doing 60 times 2, so you're doing 120, and then Regigigas can heal 80. So, well, actually, it matters if I have an extra belt because it goes 120 and then heal 80 down to 40, and then I have 130 left, and then it's 10 short. So it's actually a pretty big deal. Josh definitely needs to hit that expert belt soon. So you're going to go for a Collector, going to grab a Regigigas, a Giratina, and an Abomasnow. Abomasnow is definitely not very useful in this matchup, so I'm probably going to ditch it with a Regice eventually here. And Collector is great because it means that if Josh is able to, you know, if he has a warp point and then he kills something on the bench, I have a free bench slot, and I have options in terms of what I want to bench there. Josh benches a trap bench. Definitely an important part of this matchup as well is hitting your Flygons. Switching between your Torterras to heal can be really, really important, especially when you're tanking a ton of damage and then giga draining and then switching back to the bench to heal. Those 1 to 2 damage can be the difference between getting 2-shot and getting 3-shot, and that changes the favorability of your trades, whether or not you're getting 2-shot or 3-shot. Yeah, I've got a lot of good cards in my hand. Kind of depends on what Josh does here. He just hits me for a Giga Drain for 40, and I think this attach here is okay, but yeah, it's kind of tricky because, you know, it's like an extra energy because of the DCE, but again, it's tricky with this deck because that extra energy is kind of useful later on in the game. Regigigas has a 4-cost retreat, so when you use Giga Blaster, you can't use it again next turn, but you want to use it as many times as you can, because especially if you use Judge or Let Loose Giratina, you want to keep hand denying your opponent resources. So I mean, it depends on where you're at, where your prizes are at, and where your opponent's prizes are at, but depending on how resources are, you sometimes have that option to just go, I'm going to manually retreat a bunch of energy, sacrifice opponent Pokemon in the active, and since I switched to the bench, Giga Blaster has that opportunity to get reused. So definitely a good option to know that you have, but another tricky part about this deck that a lot of newer players, you know, might not always know that that's a play that you have to make depending on what the board state is. So Josh hits a Vibrava and he goes Psychic on the Vibrava. He's probably just ready to have that Uxie or Nidoran have free retreat, which is good depending on, you know, whether or not he hits the Expert Belt. He might want to chuck something else active before he can kill the Regigigas. Drop some damage on the Regigigas here. And in this list, so Jay Hornog is a guy from the Pokemon community. He recommended that in his article that people try out Poke Healer, and I love it. I hit double Poke Healer this turn, and it like is a pretty big swing. If I missed that Regigigas probably would have went down next turn, and that's just like no good. So I'm able to hit that Scoop Up Heads as well, which is super clutch. Gonna drop that other Regi and then start attaching to it. So yeah, this is definitely a decent board state here. I mean, Josh's board is looking pretty good as well, but I'm about to take a knockout on this Torterra, and then unless he finds an Expert Belt, you know, I have the potential to get 3-shot with Regigigas. It's definitely a really great opportunity that I have if he's unable to find that. And without the Claydol, I think that's a, you know, he might hit it, but it's a lot less likely now that he doesn't have a Claydol. So yeah, the board state here is looking pretty good. I won't get to Giga Blaster next turn unless I find like a switch out, and knowing when you need to drag off and when you need a Giga Blaster is pretty important. Like knowing that I can hit the Flygon or the Vibrava for colorless weakness with a drag off and an Expert Belt is definitely really cool. I don't know if I kill it. I think it's resistance plus 20 because it's a stage, or weakness plus 20 because it's a stage 1. So yeah, plus 20. And then I'm doing 50, 70. I think it's got 70 HP, but I'm not entirely sure. It might have 80. But yeah, being able to potentially knock out that Vibrava is definitely really good. And then it brings up that Torterra, and he does hit the Expert Belt, so that's really clutch that he hit that Expert Belt. It just means that I don't have that opportunity to heal and then hit him and be fine. So yeah, it's also... that would have been bad. If you missed the Extra Belt, it just means that he would have died next turn, and at that point you're just losing so much of your momentum that I don't know if you can come back. Yeah, like if you're ever versus a Regigigas and they're mostly healed off and have enough energy to Giga Blaster, and you don't have energy enough to attack, you're probably just going to lose the game. Well, it's not 100%, but it's likely because they're going to be denying your hand and your resources from your deck. So the resources that you're like trying to find to set up out of your hand and your top deck are just getting discarded, which is really frustrating when you're trying to set up a return knockout, especially against something so big that has like 170 HP. Yeah, chuck the Ux active. This is kind of nice because it means I get to sacrifice and then Giga Blaster next turn. I mean, we both die, but my board position is a fair amount better than his. I mean, I have a Regice and I have another Regi. He does have a Vibrava with a Psychic on it, but that's not a big deal because Flygon's weak to colorless, so being able to just hit it for colorless weakness when you're weak to fighting is definitely an advantage. So that Flygon's not really a threat. And this attach, I think, is a big misplay. I think I definitely should not have attached that metal there. It's just extra. I didn't do the math right. So yeah, I was like thinking that I had one more turn against the Torterra, but yeah, my math is awful and I misplay this metal attach. Yeah, I should have put it on the other Reggie, because then that gives me the opportunity to go level X, sacrifice, and then hit the fighting in the water from the discard to be able to Giga Blaster again. So that is one of the misplays that I made, and it seems really bad. Like, it's actually a pretty bad misplay, the attach, but I just added my numbers incorrectly, and I thought I had one more turn, but I didn't. I do have the Mesprit as well, so being able to power lock here is also really good. We do both go down next turn, but it's not a big deal because I'm ahead on prizes right now, so having equal trades is actually kind of positive for me. The Torterra is going to do 20 to itself and then knock itself out, so. Ooh, hit the Roseannes, that's actually kind of good. Josh, the only thing that he really needs right now is energy, so being able to deny that from him is actually one of the best cards that I could have hit, I think. Yeah, that Baltoy doesn't matter. The energy really is what matters. Because if you hit the Roseannes, you could just go double energy, attach to the Vibrava, and then another attach, and then attack with Flygon. So, yeah, he's just going to go for the double knockout here. But again, that's kind of advantageous to me. It would have been really advantageous if I would have attached correctly to the benched Reggie. But, c'est la vie. Sometimes you just misplay like a big dumb. That's just how it is. So promote the Reggie. And I do have that level X as well, so that's super clutch. And I am going to be able to get the Giga Blaster off here to KO. I didn't even take my prizes yet, so I am up a prize because of that trade. But Josh didn't really have any other options, really. I mean, taking out the Reggie was definitely the correct call, but it's kind of unfortunate when you have to prize sacrifice your own Torterra to do that. And like with sacrifice, I can just take the momentum back so easily here. I can give him a prize and then not care. I'm down to even prizes right now, so it's really pretty irrelevant, like, because I'm going to take a knockout here, and then he has one turn to hit something really important, and I'm power locking him as well, so it's really a tall order when you're against a Regigigas deck. And that's kind of the cool part about Regigigas is it seemed like I was kind of in a bad spot where I had only a DCE on a Reggie, and then if I hit as soon as I hit the level X, I was able to go double energy on, and then my board didn't look as unfortunate anymore because you're able to accelerate that energy at a prize sacrifice. So yeah, Josh does have some cards he can hit here. I'm going to judge him and then knock him out, but there's definitely some cards like he can hit. If he hits like DCE Flygon, he might be okay because you can't use Giga Hammer 2 turns in a row, and if I miss that fighting energy, well, I guess I could just sacrifice it so it doesn't even matter. He doesn't really have like any. He needs to go like Rare Candy, Nidoqueen, and then hit Flygon next turn, but I don't even know what he really does at this point. It's kind of a tough board state. As soon as I hit the fighting, I just win, and I can just sacrifice to hit the fighting because I'm up a prize. Because, you know, that prize doesn't really matter if you're going to win the game. You can let them take a prize, who cares? So Josh does go for the Roseannes here. And this is like the one turn where, you know, if he was able to hit a Roseannes last turn, it might have been a little different depending on if he's able to hit the Flygon, but I don't know if it's going to happen for him this game. Not a ton he can do, really. I'm just trying to think about out his options, and missing that energy attach, like, that was the difference because, oh, he does have the option to inviting trap, so that is kind of interesting. Although I just can sacrifice, so it doesn't really matter. When you're at this point, when you're at 1 prize and your opponent's at 2, having the option to sacrifice anything is really sick because not only do they not have the option to stall you out, they like, even if they hit the inviting trap and then yeah, it doesn't matter. I just sacrifice it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, definitely a cool part of this deck is you can just kill stuff that is an issue. So sacrifice, then I'm just going to take the knockout. But yeah, so this has been Regigigas versus Flyterra. Kind of a cool match. Kind of showcases Regigigas a little bit. If you have any questions about either the decks or the matchup, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.